Going into round 6 of the Sinquefield Cup, Magnus Carlsen and Levon Aronian shared the lead, and they actually played each other, but this game was something of a disappointment. Neither player really upset the balance too much, and that ended in a draw. But the other games in the round made up for it. Alexander Grishuk defeated Fabiano Caruana in quite a wild game, and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave defeated Topalov's Berlin defence very smoothly. Really nice game. But my game of the round is Wesley So against Hikaru Nakamura. Wesley So with the white pieces. Now I think there's a little bit of tension between the top American players. You know, it's very important to have bragging rights in your own country, and this was a tremendous battle. So it's a mainline King's Indian, and Wesley So selects, so it's this the Mar del Plata variation. It's been played for decades, over 60 years, and Wesley picks this line with Bishop E3. Of course, Knight D3 is also normal. But Bishop E3 is a speciality of, well, many players, for example, Shirov, but the name I really associate with this Bishop E3 line is Viktor Korchnoi. He's played this on so many occasions, and if you look at his results, they have been tremendous with this move. If you want to learn something about the King's Indian, check out Korchnoi's games in this line. Nakamura drove on with f4, so we have this familiar King's Indian pawn structure with these locked pawns in the centre of the board, and white will try to open the queen side, usually the c file, and black tries to open the g file. So let's see how this works in practice. In this position, Wesley picked the most logical move to my eyes, Knight d3, preparing c5. But Korchnoi in this position has played b4, a4, knight b5, rook c1 and g4. All these moves are possible. In fact, Wesley So previously has played rook c1 in this position, so clearly, you know, he likes this line. But knight d3 today, and Wesley was playing all his moves instantly. Okay, all this looks pretty normal. So white is able to get in this c5 move to open up the c file. Nakamura swings his pieces over to the king side, all very standard. And now this rook f7 is a really standard King's Indian move. It covers the c7 square, prepares in some circumstances to drop the bishop back to f8, and maybe even the rook comes across to g7 to support an attack on the g file. Here, the most natural moves, or the most popular move, is simply to take on d6. Previously, Nakamura has faced a4 as black, but today Wesley played king h1. Well, what do I think about this move? Well, you could say that it preempts a kind of attack on the g file. Fine. Sometimes the bishop drops back to g1 to protect h2. It feels a little bit slow to me. Actually, I would really like the king on b1 in this position. As many people have said over the years, the problem with the King's Indian, or this variation for white, is when white breaks through on the queen side, you might win a pawn or sometimes even a rook. Fine. If black breaks through on the king side, it's the king you win. So the stakes are really high in this position. Anyway, Nakamura continued on with h5, all pretty normal, and now an exchange on d6 and knight b5. White would very much like to get in knight c7 in this position. Obviously not possible here with the queen and rook covering. If Nakamura had played g4 straight away here, just continuing on with his attack, then queen c2 would transpose to a game between Alexei Shirov and Etienne Bacrot, and you can see that the knight is about to arrive on c7. And from there, well, obviously it attacks the rook, but sometimes it can dive round into e6 as well to cut off this bishop, and, you know, obviously that knight fantastic on c7. and Shirov eventually won that game. And I think Nakamura's move here is much better than g4. He played a6 after about a quarter of an hour's thought. Wesley was still playing instantly. Now this forces the knight back. Now again, if g4, then that knight can reroute into b6, and that could be pretty nasty for black. So Hikaru played b5. I think this is a very good move. It keeps that knight shut out of the game, so can't come to c4. Now there are drawbacks with this move b5. You could say it weakens the c6 square. So, you know, if white is playing beautiful positional chess, you could swing that knight into c6. The problem is, to some extent, although optically rather wonderful, it actually blocks out white's pieces from penetrating on the c file, and then black will continue with his kingside attack. Wesley played rook c6, again instantly played, which doesn't look bad, targeting this potentially weak pawn on d6. And now Hikaru started to roll on with g4, so it's going to be black's turn. Queen c2. White would very much like to somehow penetrate on c7 and maybe trade off rooks. That might be possible. Well, if it's possible, then that would be desirable, I should say, for white, to try and weaken black's kingside attack. Queen f8. We can see there's some business will take place on the f-file very soon, and this turns out to be a very well thought through move. Rook c1 looks impressive. You know, it looks as though white is going to be the first to break through. In fact, bishop d7, very good move. You can see that it's actually black has a bit of a wall, and it's very hard to somehow break through to black's kingside here. Rook c7. Now, after the game, many commentators criticised this move, rook c7, and I think justifiably. Having said that, I think black's position is already quite pleasant. If, well, a couple of moves were suggested instead. Rook b6, possible, but you know, white still isn't really getting that far. You know, sorry, after rook b6, you know, I think it might still be possible for black to charge on the king side with this very standard plan, h4 to h3, to undermine white's pawn chain. Knight b4 was also suggested, giving up the exchange. Well, one thing is black doesn't need to take this. You know, you could allow this a pawn to drop. I don't think it's so serious. But you could actually consider taking this and bringing the queen back, because this pawn isn't going too far. The d5 square is covered. This knight is badly out of play on a3, and there could be the possibility to maybe shift this bishop round to this diagonal. Not so clear. Anyway, rook c7 was played, and now Hikaru starts to shift gears and really steps up the pressure. Bishop h6. This is a very nice move. You can see, although this diagonal is closed, if it opens, and there are a lot of ways for this diagonal to open, then that rook is in the firing line, and also this bishop can contribute to the attack, as we shall see. So g3 is a possibility now, looking to open that diagonal. Therefore bishop e1. But you can see white isn't really getting very far. h4. So this is the classic idea, bringing the pawn down to h3 to undermine that pawn on f3. Reminds me very much of a game that Hikaru played against Vishwanathan Anand in the London Chess Classic a few years ago, where Nakamura just piled through on the kingside in exactly this way. Wesley took on g4, and now Hikaru played an excellent move, f3. So the breakthrough has started. If bishop f3, you simply take the exchange. So g takes f3. Now taking that rook wouldn't be so clever. that would really be what White wants. Suddenly the White's king side looks pretty secure, and this queen has a chance to come in over here. But of course this wasn't the idea. Instead, Nakamura took on e4. This is a great move. Well, first of all, we should see what happens if this is taken. A check. There you go. We can see how prescient Queen f8 was. Can't be taken because it's mate. And then this great move, Bishop e3, and this is going to force checkmate. Rook g1, or is... in fact, h3 is the threat here. And if that's taken, then h3 is a winning move. Let's go back. There's a beautiful variation here. Let me show you this. Now, Wesley played rook d1 here. But if rook takes d7, now if this is taken, then things aren't too bad for White at all. But rook takes f3 is really powerful. Let's look at this. There's a beautiful variation. Let me show you this. Check. King g1 I think would be met by bishop e3, so queen g2. You take the knight. And after rook d1, it suddenly looks as though White is back in the game. If this is taken, then queen takes e4 it could be very interesting for White. But instead, in this position, there is an amazing move. Bishop d2. This is just fantastic stuff. And the idea is, if this is taken, then knight f4 that. Bishop is pinned, then something nasty will happen here. And if the queen moves, then it just keeps going. And queen e4 check, and knight h3 wins the queen, and with the king exposed and White's pieces split, that's winning. Fantastic stuff. Knight bishop d2, amazing move. So rook d1 was played. It looks a bit tame, and in fact Nakamura crashed through here. If this is taken, then it's too much. Check. And this one's very easy actually. Black just keeps going and plays knight f4, and it's mate. Wesley took on d7, and now again we got some beautiful moves here. Rook f1 check. Can't be taken because of mate. King comes up, and now Nakamura played bishop e3, which wins beautifully. He could also have played h3. Now this is fantastic. When the king takes, then this sensational move, rook f2. Of course, this is a computer move. Very difficult to see in a game. And if this is taken, then queen takes f2. This is a gold coin moment. You can imagine in Victorian times, you know, spectators showering gold coins on the board with the beauty of this fantastic stuff. So if knight f2, then this forces checkmate. Wow, brilliant stuff. Very romantic chess. Bishop e3 was also really beautiful. If bishop takes rook, then again this wins. That's a nice checkmate. Bishop g3 was played. That got taken. Let's just see. So in this position, let's give another check. Let's count material. At the moment, black is a rook down, but White's king doesn't stand a chance. Let's see. Well, let's look at the game continuation. This got taken, and now the king escaped, in inverted commas, up the board. And I have to say that Wesley was a real gentleman here, because he went the whole way. He didn't resign, but allowed Hikaru to deliver a checkmate. As Miguel Najdorf, the great Polish-Argentinian player, said, White was a real gentleman for allowing the checkmate to be shown on the board. I mean, there was absolutely nothing that White could do to avoid this. So there we go. White's king has staggered up the board, but of course it's checkmate. Brilliant performance from Hikaru Nakamura. But I have to say, I think Wesley So's choice of opening was somewhat naive. If you're going to go in for these sharp lines, you really have to know these positions backwards, and computer variations aren't very reliable in these absolutely wild positions. So after 6 rounds, Carlsen and Aronian still share the lead with 4 points, and then there are 3 players on 3.5: Anish Giri, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave and Hikaru Nakamura. If you want full details of this round, do check out the pages on chessbase.com. Thanks.